So the first of the essays you've been set is on the demographic driver of falling fertility. If you remember, in the introduction to this module, I said that we used to think that world population was going to be about 24 billion, but it's actually been reduced to about 11 billion by the end of the century. And the reason for that is falling fertility. Now, this map is showing the total fertility rate, or the number of children born to women of reproductive age, by country. And if you look at the yellow, you can see that a large number of countries in the world already are below replacement, which we can generally say is around below 2.1. But if we also take into account the brown and the odd bits of blue, we can say that 2/3 of the world's countries are at, near or below replacement level. And indeed, it's only here in sub-Saharan Africa where we can see women are still having large numbers of children, roughly between about 4 and 7. So the question we have to ask is, why did fertility start to fall, and why has it continued to fall and expand across the globe? And let's concentrate here on Europe. So Europe was one of the first regions of the world to go through what we call the demographic transition, and over the last 100 to 150 years, its fertility has come down. So let's go back and look at what are the things that led to that initial fall in childbearing. And demographers suggest that there are 3 things: reduced infant mortality, improving particularly girls' education, and modern contraception. Infant mortality falling has been seen as really important. In other words, women choose to have fewer children if they are confident that those children will stay alive. Education is important because educated women begin to have babies later in life. They have higher earnings and thus more authority to determine family size. And it's generally accepted that access to modern family planning ensures that women can have the family size that they desire. But let's concentrate up here in Europe. And the essay question that we have set for you will very much focus on what is happening in the developed world. Here in Europe, we have some countries, particularly the Eastern European countries and some of the Southern European countries, where they have very low levels of fertility, in some cases below 1.6 or even 1.5. Some demographers are arguing that in these countries, they may be entering what we call the low fertility trap, whereby it's very difficult to raise the fertility level. This is because you may have generations that are growing up with 1 or no children as the norm. China, for example, proves a wonderful case study for this. Here we have the one-child policy for more than a generation, and there is now survey evidence which is suggesting that actually those young people in China who can have more than one child are choosing to have one child because that's their own experience. They grew up in one-child families. Returning to Europe, other people have suggested that it's social and economic change within society that means that young couples today are not able to achieve the desired family size that they wish. In other words, they may want what we call the 2-family norm, but they're finding it due to maybe economic constraints difficult to have more than one child or even to remain childless. Other people have suggested that the big social changes, particularly around women's roles, mean that the emphasis on having children and reproducing the generations is not as strong in the young European generations today as it been in the past. Other demographers are arguing that it's to do with policy, and that if we could introduce policies that enabled women in particular to combine going into the labour market and having children successfully, then that would encourage childbearing to be raised. Both the required and further reading, along with some case studies, will enable you to answer the question, why are women in most countries now having less than 2 children on average?